Hey there, and welcome to the Deep Dive. We are plunging headfirst into one of the oldest, most powerful stories ever told, Homer's Iliad. The sources you've shared give us some incredible windows into this epic, focusing on key moments, key characters that, wow, they still resonate today.
That's exactly right. And our mission here, it isn't just dusting off ancient history or talking mythology just for the sake of it. It's really about finding those timeless human struggles. They're just so deeply embedded in these stories. We're going to look at figures like Achilles, Hector, Priam, not just as like names from a textbook, right? But as complex people driven by incredibly powerful emotions. You've got rage, duty, grief, honor. Our goal is to see what their experiences, set way back in a world of bronze armor and gods intervening, what they can teach us about navigating our own lives. Right here, right now, we're sort of digging for that practical wisdom, you could say, right there in the dust of the Trojan plain.
Okay, let's jump right in then, where it all starts, like our sources show us. The Iliad kicks off with a bang, but maybe surprisingly, the initial conflict isn't Greeks versus Trojans. It's this furious argument right at the very beginning between the leader, Agamemnon, and their greatest warrior, Achilles.
Yeah, and what's utterly fascinating, isn't it, is the cause. It's all about time. This core concept in their world, it means honor, status, public esteem. Agamemnon, he's forced by god Apollo to give back his war prize, this captive woman Chryseis, and he feels his own time, his honor is like diminished.
Right.
So to compensate, he just insists on taking Achilles' prize Chryseis.
Wow.
Now, for Achilles, his whole status is built on the battlefield, right? The prizes he wins, this isn't just inconvenient, it's a direct, massive insult to his honor, everything he stands for.
And our source makes it so clear, this isn't just a minor disagreement. It describes Achilles as raging still, steadfast in his hate. His thoughts aren't just annoyed, they're consumed by revenge and slaughter. This is a fury so intense, so absolute, that he makes this sharking decision. He pulls out, withdraws completely from the fight, takes his best warriors, the Myrmidons, with him. He puts his wounded pride above everything, above the whole Greek war effort.
And the consequences are, well, immediate and devastating for the Greeks. The sources really show this unfold. His personal time, his wounded honor, it completely outweighs the desperate needs of his comrades, getting slaughtered out there. We see early on how his mother, the goddess Thetis, actually goes to Jove Zeus and gets this promise that the Greeks will just keep losing, keep suffering, until they're forced to acknowledge Achilles' supreme worth, until they give him the honor he feels he's due. It really sets the stage for huge Greek losses.
Which brings us to that really pivotal moment later on, Book 9, I think.
Yeah.
The Greeks are getting absolutely hammered.
Yeah.
Losing so badly, they're desperate. They decide, okay, we have to get Achilles back, whatever it takes. So they send their A-team, right? Their most respected guys. You've got cunning Ulysses, mighty Ajax, and Achilles' old mentor, Phoenix. And they come with this incredible offer. Our source lists it out. 10 weighty talents of the purest gold, 20 gleaming visas, tripods, horses, captive women, even 7 whole cities.
It's an exhaustless store, as the source puts it. They're trying to literally bury his anger under a mountain of wealth and apology, give him back his honor, magnified. But Achilles still refuses. Still refuses. Ulysses goes back and reports, Achilles slights thy friendship, thy proposal scorns, and less implored, with fiercer fury burns.
Even Phoenix, his old teacher, tries reasoning with him, tells him this cautionary story about another hero, Meleager, who also withdrew in anger.
Right, the Meleager story. Yeah, and Meleager only came back to fight right at the very end. Too late to get the rewards and honor he could have had, but even that doesn't move Achilles. Not enough to fight anyway. He does keep Phoenix there, which is interesting. His rage is just that complete, that stubborn.
So looking at Achilles here, the lesson about this kind of unchecked emotion seems pretty stark.
Oh, absolutely. Achilles shows us, doesn't he, how this consuming rage, sparked by what he sees as this deep insult to his honor, can lead to this kind of self-imposed isolation. And it doesn't just hurt him, it hurts the entire community he belongs to. His pride completely blinds him to the suffering of his friends, his comrades. It really forces us, I think, to reflect. Where in our own lives, do we let our ego, our anger over maybe perceived slights or injustices lead us to withdraw, to refuse to engage even when it hurts people we care about or the group we're part of? It makes you think about distinguishing, righteous anger that wants justice from that destructive fury that's just driven by ego.
That's a heavy question. Okay, let's shift gears then. Let's look across the battlefield to the Trojan side, to their great champion Hector. Our sources show us Hector in so many crucial moments, challenging the Greeks, rallying his men, and then that final tragic stand.
Hector is fascinating because he's driven by something quite different from Achilles' quest for time. For Hector, it seems to be more about eidos.
Eidos.
Yeah, eidos. It's this deep sense of shame, but also duty, responsibility, especially towards his family, his wife, his child, and his city, Troy. You see it really clearly in how he interacts with others. Like, there's that scene where he just lays into his brother Paris for shrinking back from his duel with Menelaus.
Right, he calls him out.
Totally. Hector's the one trying to hold everything together, shoulder the burden.
The source calls him a guardian of the throne, standing firm with his brothers, defending not just the walls, but his family. The whole Trojan way of life, really.
But we see his inner conflict, his internal struggle, most powerfully, I think, in that heartbreaking scene just before his final fight with Achilles. In Book 22, his parents, old King Priam and Queen Hecuba, are on the walls, just begging him, pleading with him to come inside. They know he'll die if he faces Achilles out there.
Oh, that's brutal.
It is. His mother, Hecuba, even bares her breast, reminding him of her nurturing love, begging him not to go.
Wow.
Yet Hector stays outside the gates. He stands there, wrestling with it. He actually regrets not listening to Polydamas, who earlier advised retreating the army inside the walls.
He knows it's likely suicide, doesn't he?
Deep down, yes, he knows the likely outcome. But he feels this overwhelming shame. The source says he worries about the insults, the blame from lesser men if he retreats now, but most her worthless sons insult my ear, blame those virtues which they cannot share. He feels he must glorious either return victorious or fall gloriously in battle. He has to stand his ground. And then, so tragically, he's tricked by the goddess Pallas, disguised as his brother Deiphobus, making him think he has backup in those last moments. It's just an incredibly heavy, lonely decision.
He really embodies that tragic hero, doesn't he? Bound by duty right to the very end.
He does. And when he finally faces Achilles, he makes one last request that the winner returns the loser's body for proper burial, a basic sign of respect between warriors.
But Achilles refuses.
Achilles, still consumed by grief and rage over Patroclus, refuses even that. Shows you the depth of his fury.
Witnessing Hector's struggle, it is incredibly moving. It's such a different kind of strength, a different kind of sacrifice than Achilles.
Absolutely. Hector's story is this powerful exploration of duty and sacrifice. He really teaches us about the immense weight of responsibility to family, to community, even when fulfilling that duty means facing a devastating personal cost. His struggle makes us ask ourselves, doesn't it? When have you felt that overwhelming sense of obligation to people you love or a group you belong to, where you knew the personal sacrifice might be immense, maybe even total? How do we, grapple with balancing those duties, those external pressures, with the potential for profound personal loss?
Yeah, another tough one. Stepping back a bit from the main warriors, the sources also give us these incredibly human glimpses of the cost of war, beyond the battlefield heroes. And maybe the most moving figure here is the old king of Troy, Priam. We see his agony from the walls when Hector faces Achilles, tearing his hair, just sheer despair.
That image is so powerful. But Priam's most profound moment, I think, comes near the very end of the Iliad, the final book, Book 24. Despite his overwhelming grief, despite the incredible danger, the source tells us he decides to do something almost unthinkable.
He goes to Achilles.
He goes alone, well, guided by the god Hermes, but into the enemy camp, to Achilles' tent, to ransom Hector's body, the mutilated body of his son, from the man who killed him.
Just imagining that journey.
Right, and our source paints such a vivid picture. Priam arrives, kneels before Achilles, clasps his knees.
The killer of his son.
Exactly. And he appeals not to Achilles the warrior, but to Achilles the human being, the son. He begs him, "Remember thy own father, godlike youth. Oh, think of him. Pity my age." He makes this direct, universal connection. He links his own sorrow, his own vulnerability as an old man, to Achilles' own father, Peleus, who Achilles knows he'll likely never see again.
And this actually gets through to Achilles.
It does. It reaches something deep inside him that all the insults, all the treasure couldn't touch. It softens him. The source says it moves Achilles to tears. He weeps, thinking of his own father and thinking of Patroclus, his lost friend. And Achilles, in this just incredible act of unexpected grace, accepts the ransom. He orders Hector's body to be treated with respect, cleaned, prepared, and he offers Priam hospitality. They share a meal together, the grieving father and the man who caused his grief.
That's breathtaking. A moment of shared humanity in the middle of all that brutality.
It really is. It shows that empathy, that shared understanding of grief and loss, can emerge even from the deepest, darkest places of hatred and sorrow. And the source adds another layer, too, including Helen's lament for Hector in that final book. She remembers his kindness to her, an outsider in Troy. It shows how his loss affects everyone, highlighting different sides of his character.
That scene between Priam and Achilles, it really makes you think about empathy, doesn't it?
Definitely. It shows us that recognizing our shared human experiences, especially vulnerability, grief, loss, it has this incredible potential to bridge even the deepest divides, even between sworn enemies. That encounter really forces us to ask, in moments of intense conflict in our own lives, maybe personal, maybe societal, how can we possibly harness that kind of empathy? Can we create moments of understanding or connection, maybe even unexpected grace? Like that one?
Moving beyond the individual characters, then, the sources also point to these really timeless themes woven through the whole epic. Still so relevant. We've talked a lot about rage, obviously, but the way grief is shown, it's incredibly powerful, too. Achilles' despair when Patroclus dies later in the story, it's just visceral. He covers himself in dust, tears his hair. His lament is primal. Patroclus is beyond mankind, beyond myself is slain.
Yeah, the source uses such strong imagery there. Comparing his grief to a lion returning to find its cubs stolen, its den empty. His sorrow is so huge, his clamorous grief the bellowing wood resounds. It's this raw, unfiltered expression of sorrow. It feels incredibly real, doesn't it? It connects us across thousands of years. And the sources include that interesting commentary, too, reflecting on Homer's genius, saying his poems are founded on the first feeling of human nature, love of family, country, the drive for glory.
Right.
And that his songs came from a heart that sympathized with all the feelings of man. And that's why the Iliad still hits home. It understands us.
And then there's the gods. They're everywhere. And this constant theme of fate. Our source shows divine intervention constantly, doesn't it? Minerva stopping Achilles from killing Agamemnon right at the start, Jove sending that deceptive dream, Venus whisking Paris away from danger, Pallas tricking Hector, gods fighting gods, Jove weighing the feats on his scales.
Absolutely. The gods are constantly meddling, pushing, pulling. It often seems like the humans are just puppets. Yet amidst all that divine control, the characters still clearly grapple with choice and consequences. Sarpedon, who's actually Jove's own son, is called destined by fate to die. But Jove actually thinks about saving him, right? Before Juno reminds him that if he does, all the other gods will start saving their favorites, and it'll be chaos.
So even fate isn't totally set in stone. Or maybe the gods can bend it.
It's ambiguous, isn't it? And look at Hector again before he faces Achilles. He feels chained down by fate, trapped. But his internal monologue, his thought process, it shows him wrestling with options. He chooses to stay and fight, despite the odds. The sources even mention commentary that highlights this tension between what seems like fate's decree, the unpredictable will of the gods, and the actual actions and choices people make.
It's a complex interplay. It definitely mirrors our own feelings sometimes, doesn't that? Like,
yeah.
How much is really up to us versus forces beyond our control?
Exactly. And the Iliad's grappling with fate and free will, well, it gives us a lens to look at our own lives. It prompts us to think how much of our path is really sort of predetermined by circumstances, by things outside our control, call it fate, destiny, whatever, versus how much is genuinely shaped by our own will, our choices, our character, and how do we navigate our own intense grief, in a world that often wants us to just suppress sorrow and move on fast. And maybe most fundamentally, how do we figure out what parts of our lives we can actually change or control versus what we just have to accept? Much like these heroes wrestling with their destiny and the gods out there on the plains of Troy.
Wow. Okay, so this deep dive into Homer's Iliad, using these specific excerpts, it really drives something home, doesn't it? I mean, the bronze armor, the chariots, the battle tactics, that's all ancient history. But the core emotions, the fundamental dilemmas, the human heart that's laid bare, it's strikingly, undeniably familiar.
It really is. We've journeyed with Achilles through that destructive pride and overwhelming grief. We've watched Hector wrestle with the crushing weight of duty and, well, the inevitability of fate. We've witnessed Priam embody that universal, heartbreaking pain of a parent's loss. These figures, they aren't just names on a dusty page, are they? They feel like powerful, enduring reflections of the human spirit under immense pressure, in crisis. And even sometimes in those unexpected moments of connection.
That note from the sources you mentioned earlier feels like the perfect summing up, that Homer's poems were founded on the first feeling of human nature, that he sympathized with all the feelings of man, therefore they enter and will continue to enter every breast which cherishes the same sympathies. That really lands.
Exactly. The Iliad is this powerful reminder, isn't it, that the
Mhm.
struggle for honor, for recognition, and
Hmm.
the burden of responsibility to the people we love, the devastation of loss, the complexities of rage and forgiveness, and that search for meaning in a world that often feels chaotic, maybe even governed by forces we don't fully get. These aren't new problems. They're not modern inventions. They are fundamental, enduring threads in this rich, often painful, but always compelling tapestry of, well, the human condition.
So after immersing ourselves in all this epic struggle, what does it truly mean to be human, to be mortal, to face suffering and loss, sometimes on a massive scale? And how do we find something, maybe it's a duty like Hector or empathy like Priam found in Achilles, or just sheer resilience, find something that might just look like heroism in a world that in its core struggles, its core emotions, feels remarkably, maybe even hauntingly, similar to those bloody plains outside the walls of Troy? That perhaps is something worth pondering long after our deep dive into this ancient epic comes to a close.